I bow before no one. This is too little. I am worth much more than this.
You think highly of yourself, captive?
He's bluffing!
Alea acta est! Forward, soldiers! Dusty! Hold the line! Run back!
Our legions are ready to march from here.
My fleet will secure the sea routes.
Then we are in agreement.
Why? We were brothers!
You betrayed Rome.
No, I served her!
Your service ends now.
My name is Gaius Julius Caesar! Ivan! You will follow me to victory!
A figure who brought the Roman Republic to the verge of total collapse. He became the single most dominant person in Rome and was murdered by the friend he trusted above all others. Yet by the moment of his death, the Republic had already ceased to truly exist. This is far more than the tale of a single stabbing. It is the account of an entire political order disintegrating, and that order was the Roman Republic itself. Rome, 1st century before Christ. The world is shifting rapidly. The Republic still appears mighty on the surface, but decay is eating it alive from the inside. The Senate swims in wealth while ordinary citizens grow exhausted and bitter. Military commanders are becoming more powerful than the state, and the old Republican framework is steadily contracting. Right in the center of this gathering storm, a young man comes of age, Gaius Julius Caesar. He descends from an ancient patrician lineage, yet his family's coffers are nearly empty. In Rome, what truly matters is the illustrious name you carry, not the weight of gold in your purse. From boyhood, Julius Caesar absorbs a hard lesson in the streets and forums of the city. Real power flows from networks of loyalty and influence far more than from noble birth alone. He steps into the political arena while still remarkably young. In the Roman world, however, politics is never a gentleman's debate. It is a ruthless game of alliances and enmities. At that time, the Republic stood bitterly divided between two irreconcilable factions: the Optimates, defenders of senatorial privilege, and the Populares, champions of the common people's cause. Caesar deliberately throws in his lot with the Populares. That single decision marks the first grave gamble of his career. Then Sulla seizes absolute power and declares himself dictator. Suddenly, Caesar's name appears on the infamous prescription lists, the rolls of those marked for execution. He is barely more than a youth. No military triumphs stand to his credit yet. But ideas are the most perilous things of all. They spread, they slip away, they get hunted down. When Sulla's soldiers drag the young Caesar into their presence and bark the order to kneel, he refuses. He stands tall. There is an unmistakable fire in this boy that unsettles them. Sulla, the all-powerful dictator, spares his life. Yet even he mutters a warning to those around him. This young man carries danger in his bones. Caesar is banished from Rome. He joins the army instead. There, he masters the arts of war and, just as crucially, the discipline of waiting. Then comes the day when Cilician pirates seize him at sea. This is no ordinary captivity tale. The pirates name their price for his freedom, a modest ransom by any measure. Caesar only laughs in their faces. "That's far too little," he tells them. "I am worth much more than that." He demands that the pirates increase the ransom amount, significantly. The captors are stunned. Here is a prisoner who shows no trace of fear, only bold confidence. In the end, the demanded sum is delivered, and Caesar is released unharmed. But he keeps the memory alive. Later, he returns with armed ships, tracks down the very same pirates, captures them, and orders every last one crucified, exactly as he had once jokingly promised them he would do. For the first time, Rome witnesses something unprecedented, a man who neither forgets an insult nor forgives those who dared to offer it. Time passes. Caesar ascends steadily through the ranks of Roman society. He proves himself a magnetic orator, capable of swaying the crowds with words alone. Yet in Rome, mere eloquence will never be enough to reach the summit. True ascent demands real power, and real power is built on unbreakable alliances. So Caesar forms a secret pact with two of the Republic's mightiest figures, the brilliant General Pompey and the fabulously wealthy Crassus. Historians would later name this private agreement the First Triumvirate. He records it in official documents as a noble alliance for the good of the Republic. In truth, though, the arrangement carves Rome into three separate spheres of dominance. Crassus brings the immense fortune, Pompey supplies the unmatched military prestige, and Caesar contributes the sharpest intellect and political cunning. Soon, Caesar is dispatched to govern Gaul. It is there, in those distant, untamed lands, that he transforms into the figure destined to reshape Rome forever. The Gallic Wars erupt and rage on for 8 relentless years. 8 years filled with brutal combat, rivers of blood, and masterful tactical brilliance. Caesar does far more than merely conquer. He also narrates his own victories. Through his own hand, he composes the Commentarii de Bello Gallico, vivid, compelling dispatches that turn him from successful commander into living legend across the Roman world. His fame swells back in the city. His legions grow fanatically devoted to him personally. The ordinary citizens adore him as their champion, yet the Senate watches with mounting dread. A general this formidable, this beloved, this wealthy in glory and loyal troops is becoming far too powerful for comfort. And Rome has an ancient, ironclad principle, one etched deep into its republican soul. No single man may ever be allowed to rise. The Republic cannot possibly outgrow or outlast its own founding principles. Yet Caesar has now grown larger than the Republic itself. Rome simmers with unease and tension. Through his string of spectacular conquests in Gaul, Gaius Julius Caesar has transcended the role of mere general. He has become a living myth, a hero larger than life in the eyes of the people. The Senate trembles. In the traditional machinery of the Roman Republic, every military commander is constitutionally required to disband his legions and surrender imperium the instant his governorship or command expires. Caesar's soldiers, however, pledge their loyalty not to the distant Senate or abstract republic, but directly and personally to him. In growing panic, the Senate maneuvers to pull Pompey, the one remaining titan of comparable stature, firmly into their camp. The two men who once stood as partners and equals now find themselves staring at each other across a widening chasm. Crassus, the third pillar of the original power-sharing arrangement, is already dead. With his fortune and his moderating presence gone, the delicate equilibrium of the First Triumvirate shatters completely. At last, the Senate issues its ultimatum and orders Caesar. The Senate dispatches a direct, uncompromising command: disband your legions and return to Rome as a private citizen, alone. The ultimatum leaves no room for ambiguity. Obey or be declared an enemy of the state, a public traitor. Caesar now stands on the northern bank of the Rubicon River. This is no ordinary waterway. For generations, the Rubicon has served as the sacred boundary line of Roman law itself. the point beyond which no general may lead armed forces without automatically committing an act of rebellion against the Republic. His soldiers stand in disciplined silence. His officers watch him, tense and expectant. Caesar pauses, weighing the irreversible choice before him. This single decision will mark the decisive fracture in Roman history. Then, with calm resolve, he speaks the famous words, "The die is cast." He urges his horse forward and leads his army across the shallow stream. Once the opposite bank is reached, the point of no return is past forever. Civil war engulfs Rome. Pompey, accompanied by most of the Senate, hurries eastward in retreat. Caesar, moving with extraordinary speed, seizes control of the Italian peninsula almost without resistance. Caesar pursues his rival across the sea and lands in Greece. There, on the broad plains of Pharsalus, the two former allies and comrades finally confront each other in open battle. Pompey commands a numerically superior force. His legions outnumber Caesar's by a wide margin. Yet Caesar's troops hold a decisive edge. They are battle-hardened, well-fed, disciplined, and fiercely devoted to their general. The clash is fierce, but brief. Pompey's lines collapse under the pressure of Caesar's tactical brilliance and the unbreakable spirit of his veterans. Defeat is total and swift. Pompey escapes the slaughter and flees eastward once more, hoping to rally fresh support. His path leads him to Egypt. There, however, treachery awaits instead of refuge. Egyptian courtiers, eager to curry favor with the victorious Caesar, assassinate Pompey on arrival. They sever his head and present it, wrapped as a macabre trophy, to Caesar upon his own arrival in Alexandria. When Caesar gazes upon the severed head of his old friend and rival, no triumph lights his face, only grim sorrow. Pompey had become his mortal enemy, yet he remained a fellow Roman citizen, a pillar of the Republic now brutally cast down. In that moment, Caesar sees clearly, Rome itself is bleeding away its former greatness. And so, in the shadow of that grim gift, a new and fateful chapter opens in Egypt, Cleopatra. Clever beyond measure, fiercely ambitious, and every bit as perilous as she is captivating. Caesar forms an alliance with Cleopatra. He plunges into the raging power struggle of the Egyptian civil war and, through decisive military intervention, places her firmly on the throne as sole ruler. Rome is no longer merely a powerful city-state governing scattered provinces. Something far greater, the faint but unmistakable outline of a true empire, is taking shape before everyone's eyes. Upon his return to the capital, Caesar rides a seemingly unstoppable wave of triumphs. One resounding victory follows another. In response, the Senate heaps extraordinary honors upon him. They first appoint him Dictator. Then, in an unprecedented step, they declare him Dictator Perpetuo, Dictator for life. This single act ignites the deepest terror yet felt in the city. The Roman Republic had been born from the violent expulsion of its last king centuries earlier. Now, after generations of fierce opposition to monarchy in any form, supreme power rests in the hands of one solitary individual. Caesar wastes no time wielding that authority for sweeping change. He tackles the crushing burden of private and public debt, restructuring it to bring relief. He overhauls the chaotic Roman calendar, introducing the far more accurate Julian system that still bears his name. The ordinary people of Rome embrace him as their savior and champion. Yet beneath the cheers and adulation, the Roman elite, the old aristocratic families, seethe with resentment. A dangerous rumor begins to circulate quietly through the city's most exclusive circles. This man intends to crown himself king. In Rome, no word carries more venom than king. It evokes memories of tyranny, foreign domination, and the loss of liberty itself. What starts as hushed suspicion swiftly hardens into conspiracy. The city no longer speaks with one voice. The streets erupt in cheers and festivals for Caesar's triumphs, yet in the shadowed corridors and marble halls of the Senate, betrayal takes root and grows. Gaius Julius Caesar has outgrown the title of general. He now holds the unprecedented office of Dictator perpetuo, dictator for life. That single phrase strikes terror into the soul of the Republic. The entire Roman system had been deliberately constructed in direct opposition to monarchy. Centuries earlier, when the last king, Tarquinius Superbus, was driven from the city in disgrace, Rome swore an eternal oath. Never again would one man rule as sovereign over free citizens. The citizens of Rome had taken a solemn, unbreakable oath centuries before. Never again would a king sit upon the throne and command their lives. Yet now a single individual holds absolute decision-making power, answering to no one. Caesar never openly proclaims himself monarch. He has no need to. His deeds alone breed widespread dread and suspicion. Grand statues rise in his likeness across the city. An entire month is renamed in his honor, Julius, the month we still call July. On occasion, when senators rise respectfully in his presence as tradition demands, Caesar stays firmly seated. To the proud old aristocracy, this deliberate refusal to stand is nothing less than a calculated humiliation, a silent declaration of superiority. All the while, Caesar presses forward with sweeping changes. He codifies and clarifies the chaotic tangle of Roman laws. He overhauls the outdated calendar, giving birth to the precise Julian system. He wages war on entrenched corruption, rooting out graft wherever he finds it. But every reform, however beneficial, further shatters the fragile equilibrium that once kept power distributed among many. Two men now step from the shadows into the light of history: Marcus Junius Brutus and Gaius Cassius Longinus. These two names will soon alter the destiny of Rome forever. He is a man of genuine principle, honorable, reflective, deeply devoted to the Republican ideal of shared power and liberty. Yet he also stands among Caesar's inner circle, one of the dictator's most trusted and favored lieutenants. Caesar places profound confidence in him. There is even a persistent story that because of his long-standing affair with Brutus's mother Servilia, Caesar once spoke of Brutus almost as if he were his own flesh and blood, a surrogate son. Cassius, by contrast, is cut from very different cloth. He burns with fiercer ambition, possesses a harder edge, and carries a deeper reservoir of resentment and fury. Cassius looks at the situation with cold clarity. If this man is not halted right now, Rome will cease to be a republic and will instead become the personal dominion of a single autocrat. From that realization, the conspiracy is born. The plotters gather in utmost secrecy. They bind themselves with solemn oaths. Yet this is no impulsive outburst of passion or sudden fury. The murder they plan is deliberate, methodical, and ruthlessly premeditated. A surgical strike designed to preserve the Republic at any cost. The date is March 15th, 44 BC, the Ides of March. Mid-March has arrived, the day long shadowed by ominous warnings. Some well-meaning, or perhaps mocking, soothsayer approaches Caesar and urges, "Beware the Ides of March." Caesar only smiles. brushing the prophecy aside with light-hearted scorn. He refuses to bow before omens or destiny. That same morning, his wife, Calpurnia, awakens shaken by terrifying nightmares. She begs him, pleads with him, not to leave the house, not to attend the Senate today. Her fear is palpable, her dreams filled with blood and ruin. Yet Caesar will not yield. To show dread, to shrink from public duty because of a woman's visions, would be to expose frailty. And frailty has no place in the man who now rules Rome. So he chooses to go. As he makes his way toward the Senate house through the bustling streets, a stranger presses a small scroll into his hand. The note contains a desperate, detailed warning. A conspiracy is afoot to murder him this very day. Caesar accepts the paper, but does not pause to unroll and read it. He tucks it away, unread, and continues walking toward his fate. Inside the Senate chamber, the conspirators wait. The senators are assembled in full. Brutus stands among them, outwardly calm. Cassius is there as well, eyes sharp, resolve hardened. Many others, men who once swore friendship, are present, their daggers already hidden beneath their togas. The senators are assembled, appearing calm and unremarkable at first glance. Beneath their togas, however, every conspirator grips a concealed dagger, ready for the signal. Caesar enters and takes his seat in the chamber. In an instant, the circle closes around him, a ring of men he once counted as friends and allies. The opening strike comes without warning from Publius Servilius Casca. Caesar, caught completely off guard, cries out in astonishment and pain. He instinctively fights back, staggering a step or two away from the onslaught. Then his eyes fall upon one of the attackers. Marcus Junius Brutus, the man he had loved almost as a son, the one he had trusted above nearly all others, stands there with dagger raised. In that frozen instant, time itself appears to halt. History has immortalized the moment with a single, piercing line. Et tu, Brute. And you, Brutus? / you too, Brutus? Whether those exact words ever passed Caesar's lips remains a matter of scholarly dispute. What is beyond question is the devastating truth they convey. The most shattering betrayal always arrives from the hand of someone closest to your heart. The assault continues relentlessly. 23 daggers pierce his body in total. At last, the most powerful man in Rome collapses lifeless onto the marble floor of the Senate house. A widening pool of blood spreads beneath him. Blood pools and spreads across the cold marble floor. The conspirators raise their voices in frantic triumph, shouting that they have rescued the Republic. Yet Rome itself is not saved. Its very life force is draining away in that moment. As Caesar lies motionless amid the growing crimson stain, the assassins stand over him convinced they are liberators, heroes who have struck down a tyrant to restore freedom. But the ordinary citizens of Rome are not senators steeped in ancient ideals of liberty and tradition. The masses care far more for full bellies and the promise of safety than for abstract republican principles. And it was Caesar who had delivered both: grain distributions, land for veterans, order after decades of chaos. When word of the murder races through the city, shock ripples outward like a stone dropped in still water. The streets, usually bustling with daily life, suddenly surge with restless energy. What had begun as quiet murmurs of discontent now hardens into open fury. Brutus and Cassius had confidently expected the people to hail them as deliverers, to carry them shoulder high through the forum in gratitude. They miscalculated catastrophically. Caesar was never merely a dictator who seized power. To millions of Romans, he had become something far greater, a living emblem of hope. The one man who seemed capable of lifting the weight of their hardships and giving them a future worth believing in. And there he lay, hope itself, slaughtered and bleeding out on the cold marble. In that exact instant, a new figure strides forward onto the stage of history, Marcus Antonius, one of Caesar's staunchest, most unwavering supporters. Cunning, fiercely intelligent, a master of political maneuvering. Antonius steps up to speak at Caesar's public funeral. The words he delivers may not match the polished poetry Shakespeare would invent centuries later, yet their impact proves every bit as devastating. He begins by calmly reading aloud the contents of Caesar's last will and testament. In it, the dictator had bequeathed tangible gifts to the people of Rome, cash payments to every citizen, and his private gardens, once reserved for the elite, thrown open for versor as public parks for all to enjoy. Then, in a voice steady and deliberate, Antonius poses a single, devastating question to the assembled crowd. Was this the conduct of a tyrant? A hush falls over the thousands gathered in the forum. Silence stretches for a heartbeat. Then fury erupts. Rage sweeps through the people like wildfire. The so-called liberators, the men who had convinced themselves they had saved the Republic, realize too late the fatal miscalculation they have made. They are forced to flee for their lives as the mob turns against them. Rome stands on the brink once more, plunged into fresh chaos, grief, and vengeance. Once more, the city is pulled into the jaws of civil war. This time, however, the conflict transcends mere vengeance for a murdered leader. This is the Republic's last, desperate stand, its final, fatal struggle for survival. Into the chaos steps Caesar's chosen successor, a young man named Gaius Octavius. In time, he will adopt the name Augustus and become the first emperor of Rome. He is strikingly young, outwardly lacking the battle scars and gravitas of seasoned commanders. Yet beneath that youthful appearance lies a mind of exceptional calm, clarity, and ruthless calculation. Marcus Antonius, Caesar's old comrade in arms, and young Octavius form an uneasy but powerful partnership. Together, they establish the Second Triumvirate, a new three-man dictatorship that openly claims supreme authority over Rome. Brutus and Cassius, the architects of Caesar's assassination, escape eastward with what remains of their supporters, hoping to rebuild their strength in the provinces. Their end comes swiftly at the Battle of Philippi. There, the forces of the triumvirate crush them decisively. Brutus, cornered and defeated, takes his own life with his own sword. Cassius, too, meets death by his own hand shortly before. Both men had convinced themselves, and tried to convince others, that they were defending the sacred ideals of the Republic. But by then, the Republic had already become little more than a fading memory, a beautiful but impossible dream. One final confrontation still looms on the horizon. Antony and Octavian now enters the fray as a central player. Meanwhile, Marcus Antonius has withdrawn to Egypt, deeply entwined with Cleopatra and her kingdom. The decisive clash arrives at the Battle of Actium. Antonius's forces are routed. His dream of ruling alongside Cleopatra collapses in defeat. In the aftermath, both Antonius and Cleopatra choose death by their own hands. With their suicides, the stage is cleared. Only one figure remains standing unchallenged in the Roman world: Octavian. The Senate, bowing to the new reality, bestows upon him an unprecedented honor. They grant him the title Augustus, a name evoking reverence, dignity, and almost divine authority. In that single act, the long era of the Roman Republic draws to its irrevocable close. The Roman Empire is born. The deepest irony cuts through the entire saga. Julius Caesar himself never claimed the crown of king, yet his murder opened the path for an emperor to rise over Rome. Far from preserving the Republic, the assassination delivered its fatal wound. It did not restore liberty. It extinguished it forever. Caesar wielded immense power in life, yet his true dominance emerged only in death. His legacy endures so powerfully that even today, the calendar still carries his name, etched forever in the month of July. His name was granted immortality. It was carved permanently into the very calendar we still use. It evolved into a title of supreme authority. For hundreds of years afterward, Caesar signified emperor itself. The German Kaiser, the Russian Tsar. Both words trace their roots directly back to him. And so the great, enduring question remains: was Julius Caesar truly a tyrant, or had the Republic already crumbled beyond repair long before his rise? History refuses to deliver a unanimous verdict. Yet one fact stands beyond dispute. Certain individuals reshape the world not merely during their lifetime, but with undiminished force long after they are gone. When Caesar led his legions across the Rubicon, he was doing far more than fording a shallow stream. He was stepping over the threshold of one historical age and into another, an irreversible passage. Rome embarked on a course from which there could be no return. Some figures merely record the flow of events. Others cleave time itself in half, creating a stark before and after. Caesar belonged to the second group, and the world has never been the same since. When Julius Caesar entered the world, the Roman Republic stood tall and appeared unbreakable. By the day he fell bleeding on the Senate floor, Rome had already passed the invisible boundary from which no return was possible. Yet the most haunting reality of all is this: his killers struck him down in the desperate hope of halting the tide he represented, but they could never again shut the gate he had forced open. Was he a hero? To many who suffered under the old order, yes, he was their champion. Was he a tyrant? To those who cherished the ancient liberties of the Senate and the mos maiorum, absolutely. One truth stands beyond debate: he was never an ordinary man. And men who rise far above the common run of humanity almost always provoke two simultaneous reactions: profound admiration from some, and deep, instinctive fear from others. Rarely one without the other. Perhaps the fairest judgment avoids the trap of innocence or guilt altogether. Caesar was neither purely virtuous nor wholly culpable. He was the most formidable product, the inevitable outcome, of a decaying, unjust, and increasingly dysfunctional system. When the mechanisms of justice and balance grow feeble, when the old safeguards erode, great disruptive forces become unavoidable. The true question history leaves us with is not whether Caesar himself was good or bad. The deeper, more uncomfortable inquiry is simpler and more final. Could Rome possibly have taken any other path? In the end, no. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.